Welcome to the Emerging Screenwriters interview series, sponsored by ISA. We are here today with
Melissa Birks.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
and
inviting
talking
me.
about your career and what's going on with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Let's start with a couple easy icebreakers.
Okay.
What are you watching now, or what's your all-time favorite shows?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about what I'm watching now, which is The Patient. I guess it's on Hulu. And then when I talk more about my brand, I write a lot about serial killers.
Okay.
So I'm fascinated by, the psychiatrist angle. In fact, one of the screenplay I'm working on right now involves a psychiatrist and his relationship with a serial killer. So I'm super interested in how, it's wonderful watching how they did. Just last night, the main character Alan is talking to his dead psychiatrist. So
gosh.
It's really so that's
I've heard amazing things about that. I haven't watched it yet.
it's kind of what I'm I like
You're
that.
into?
Yeah, I'm into. I did watch Dahmer, and I know that's very polarizing, and I don't think I need to say any more about it, but I did watch it because again, that's just a true crime type of thing is what I'm into.
Ugh, I'm scared to watch Dahmer.
Yeah.
I will, but I'm kind of like, I don't know if do I need to?
Exactly.
I don't know if I need to.
Yeah, it's 10 hours, it's 10 so it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
it's
I did watch it. I also jumped in on the new American Gigolo.
What is that?
Well, the 80 from 1980.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a whole reboot but it's a TV series.
Oh.
And John, I'm going to mispronounce his name. Bernthal.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you. And thank you. Sorry, John. And Rosie O'Donnell was in it playing a cop, which is really fun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what is that on?
I think Hulu. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably, yeah. So I just kind of not well, it's a mystery, So but it's not my So it's fun.
All right, so let's dive into all about you.
Okay.
Let's talk about your beginnings in terms of writing. When did you first know that you wanted to be a writer, or were you always writing? What's your origin story?
Sure. My origin story is actually writing about my stuffed animals. So I'm talking 6 or 7 years old. Not heavy on plot. A lot of, I love my Henrietta. She was a beanbag hen named Henrietta. I had a frog named Jumpy, not real creative, but yeah, I would just write these, stories as they are about my stuffed animals. And when I was, I think 10, I got there's a writing contest with the newspaper in my hometown, and I got honorable mention for these series of stories about my stuffed animals, and it was called Melissa's Animals. And the worst thing you can do to a young person is be like, hey, you won something, because then you're like, I can write, you're 10. I got a check for $50. I still remember this.
Huge.
Yeah, woo! I can, and so really that's the origin, and so I've never not been writing. In college, in my undergrad, I joined the college newspaper. I had a wonderful experience. I had friends who were fantastic, who are still friends today. And that got me into, I was a journalist for many years. So I worked for newspapers back when they were actual newspapers. Yeah. For many years. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then when you worked in that space, were you always writing fiction? Were you writing screenplays? Like, what were you writing during that time?
I always was, again, I would write, I always liked feature stories, but I was an editor. I had many times over the years, I was an editor, I was a reporter. My favorite things were always the features, I went on a dinosaur dig once for a week. I mean, things like that. I just love that kind of, experience stuff. But the turn to screenplays was very, a strange click, and I do tell this story, and it's boring, but it was what it was. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, working at the newspaper, and I was in a writer's group because I wanted to expand my writing.
Sure.
And I go, and there's a gentleman who was talking about a book he wrote, and it was about formatting screenplays, which you think, hello, that's the most boring thing in the world. Let's talk about slugline, but something ignited me, and he talked about inciting incidents, and he talked about structure, first act, second, because that was really what it was about,
Sure.
And that was it. And I know that's so simplistic.
It just clicked for you.
It just clicked. All of a sudden I was like, everything I saw could be a movie. That could be a movie. That could be a movie.
Right.
And, and so, shortly after that, I moved to Chicago without a job, which was incredibly intelligent to do. Lived in a basement for a while, a nice basement, but it was a basement. And I worked in various things, and then I did land, the day job, and I have a full-time, I write for an ad for a law firm in marketing now. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the screenplays, but I've written many screenplays. I mean, this is a long time. So.
Well, at the beginning you talked about your brand. So tell me
Sure.
what's your voice, what's your brand, what do you write?
Sure. And this took me a while, to develop, I think. And I really brand myself now as historical fiction. I really, and I mix it with true crime, but I really love I love mixing this fact and fiction. I don't, and for lack of it, and deciding where I'm going to take the story, the spine of the truth, but where I'm going to have fun with it, and make it my own kind of. And it's funny because I'm no longer in newspapers, but one of the favorite strategies I use in historical fiction is I have this account with the New York Times, right? And I go back to their digital archives. And I love that. I love, if I have a story, I have one story that's not about a serial killer, but it's about an elephant, Jumbo. He was a famous elephant in the Victorian era. And spoiler alert, Jumbo dies tragically. So I find the New York Times covered Jumbo. Jumbo was huge. He was a huge celebrity elephant. And I find these stories, and I find the coverage of his death. And there's just these little gems of things that I never would have found without that. Yeah. Like, smart. Yeah. And, there's this poor elephant is lying there, and trophy hunters would come and go at his, nip off his ear or his tail. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Jumbo.
Poor Jumbo. And so the story's about his keeper. And so, again, it gets into, the character and the emotion and stuff. Yeah.
Wow. I love how you use your past career currently in everything that you're doing.
I like to think that I think that it truly is. I really, it is fun for me to look at the headlines and the, this old, things. I enjoy that. And I take, again, I take what I will, and I leave what I want, what I don't want.
But I think that's also really smart, is that I think a lot of times when people go to write historical screenplays, they stick too close to just the facts that they know, and you have to fill in those gaps.
You do, yeah.
Whatever you want to create.
Right.
Whatever feels like it would be organic to the story or excite the story, right?
For sure, absolutely. Yeah. And, with this case of this elephant and his keeper, I completely invented a love interest because I'm like, otherwise it's just a nice guy with a very nice elephant. And, it's hard to get that,
Yeah.
And that's just the way I took it, whether that's right or wrong.
Right.
That's the way I took it. And right now, and I'm enjoying that. It's a fun ride. I just completely invented this love interest, and how that relationship works or doesn't work. But a script I also am doing right now is true crime, historical fiction about a true serial killer. And there's it's part of his courtroom drama. So I have a lot of quotes from prosecution and defense and stuff that I pick and choose, where I want it. I don't always know where it went in the thing, but I'm trying to get the drama of the courtroom drama, so.
What is it about serial killers or true crime that is so exciting to you?
Yeah. I'm going to date myself, but I'm going to go back to the 90s. And I happened to read a New Yorker, or I think it was, New Yorker article about John Wayne Gacy's upcoming execution. And it was just a very in-depth, it was just fascinating to me. And so that kind of, I point to that story, that article, that just kind of, it's like, wow, what an interesting brand of kind of murder, And
do you like the psychology and sort of like what's going on in a serial killer's brain?
Yeah,
that kind of thing?
What's going on in the brain and what makes them. I took a course in my first master's degree about the uncanny, which is just a kind of Sigmund Freud. I'm not going to go into it, but it's a type of horror, and a type of discomfort, and serial killers embody that, and that to me is interesting because the uncanny is about the familiar turned unfamiliar, right? And so they are kind of we are all familiar with murder, but we're not familiar with this type of murder because where does it come from? It comes psychologically. Where does it come from? So that to me is interesting. So
yeah. I'm always fascinated by that kind of stuff, but I don't know that my heart could handle. I don't know that I could dive into that so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that is a danger for myself, even as I'm talking about it, because you can, I've been reading and writing, about serial killers for years, and you can lose your empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can.
Right.
It's easy because you're just writing about this, you can forget about victims.
Well, you're entering the mind of somebody who has no empathy.
Absolutely.
So,
right. For sure.
Okay, so where are you in your career now? And what are you looking forward to in the future? What are you hoping for? What are you working towards?
Okay. I'm going to tell you when I have this prepared. When you invited me, and I thought, yes, I am an emerging writer. I'm really emerging, meaning I don't have representation. I haven't optioned a script. I mean, I am, and I've been writing for a long time. And so I thought about this for this week, and I remembered many years ago, I'm also hugely interested in animals. Animals and serial killers. Nothing to do with it. But I love animals. And I love David Attenborough. And I love his blue planet, frozen planet, this water planet, this planet. Many years ago, I was watching Frozen Planet. And David Attenborough is like, and now we have the Arctic woolly bear caterpillar. And I'm like, whoa, this little caterpillar lives for like 14 years, something like that. He can live.
Yeah.
Okay. In the Arctic tundra. And he has, the little Arctic woolly bear, has a type of blood that is an antifreeze. And he can thaw and freeze over like 7 times in his lifespan.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember this because it's just fascinating.
I am the caterpillar.
I am the Arctic woolly bear caterpillar. That's what I'm thinking. So if I figure I can thaw, I can emerge. I can thaw, and someday I'll become the Isabella tiger moth. Which, by the way,
love that.
Yeah,
I
dies.
love that.
The moth dies in like a week.
Oh.
But you're caterpillar.
But you're living.
Right.
You've made it.
I made it. Yeah.
You're a beautiful moth.
I know exactly. So I thought about this a lot. I remembered that. I was like, what can I offer people? Because I am what do I have? So
then what do you do? Are you somebody who enters contests?
For sure.
Like, what do you do?
Yeah, the strategies.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I do enter content. The longer I've been in, I've figured there's many different ways to do this, right? There are contests, there are platforms like ISA, like Stage 32, there are, Roadmap. I go to, I get consultations quite a bit, quite often because, to help me rewrite, and I'm all about rewriting. One thing, I have a friend whose name shall be nameless, who gets on me because I don't query enough. And so she's like, and so I'm slowly starting to get into the blind querying.
Querying is thankless. Yeah. So it's hard.
It's very it's a black, it's a black hole.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But once you get into a rhythm,
for sure,
then you can kind of like go, okay, all right, here I am.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of research, really, because you don't want, oh my God, just this weekend I was researching a place to query. It was a company that will accept unsolicited scripts. I'm like, great. They had a documentary about a serial killer in Sweden or something. So I'm like, great, I can pitch, whatever. And the longer I go down this rabbit hole of this documentary, which I couldn't even watch because it's not even, I couldn't find it. It turns out that the guy is a false confessor as part of his story. Oh. So had I sent this without that, they'd have been like, dude, if I'd been like, hey, I'm connected to your story about, whatever, they'd have been like, no, you're not, because our story is about his false confession.
Right. That's a good point, though. It's a good tip that when you're querying, you need to do the research. If you want to write 100 query letters that are form letters, then you're going to get 0 replies back. So if you take the time and you actually research and you're thoughtful about it, then you have a much better chance. It's still likely that you won't get a reply, but a much better chance of getting a reply when you do the work for it. So, but it is a lot of work.
That was I could have really been, not they would have answered, whatever, but the point,
what's the point of doing all that work if it's a throwaway?
And I will also say that that networking, and I, you know, if we're talking about strategies for people to kind of learn from, I would say, you know, obviously that's an obvious. I have a very great writers group that I like. But I'm going to be honest, this is just my personality. I'm not a good networker. So I will say that. I'm very introverted. I'm not, the events I've, you know.
It's hard for you to sort of like go and be the person who's like, oh, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, and what do you do? What you want to produce? Oh, you want to read my script?
But I think you're doing a fantastic job with me.
Thanks.
And we just met, so.
We just met, yeah.
I think you can do it.
Yeah, well, I had notes.
You just have to like find the people that you can just sort of, you know, be comfortable with right away.
Yeah,
and that aren't the like fast, you know, talkers.
Yeah,
Like I don't like the small talky stuff.
Well,
either.
See, I think that's my problem is that I'm not.
You'd rather just dive right in.
I would rather just dive right in, and then that's kind of awkward because you're like, "Hi, Melissa, are you a producer? Great."
Right. You're like, I wrote about serial killers.
Yeah, I wrote about serial killers. How would you like? Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you find one person that gets you, then you're like, great. Then you two can go around and like, you know, meet people.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a weird game. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about ISA.
Yeah.
When were you first introduced to ISA, and then how did you make your way onto the development slate?
Yeah. I think 2015. ISA started their fast track, right? And I was the first, one of the first fellows with another gentleman named Martin, if I remember right. So that's 2015. So Max Tim and Felicity, I mean, and Mal, it was a week. I had never been to LA, so I was in Chicago at the time, you know, so brought out to LA. Oh my God, you know, they put me at the Standard. We went to Melt. I mean, it was fantastic. It was just great. And I met, you know, so executives, and I got, I didn't know anything about executive, what they're looking for, you know, I remember being impressed about how much they read and are on top of events and stuff like that, because again I think they need to draw from not everybody's current events, but they just need to know what's going on. So I was really impressed by that. And so actually after that, later that year, I think Max put me in touch with an agent, and so I'm going to try to use a word. I'm going to sound weird, but hip-pocketed, is that it? Yeah. With my script that got me into the fellowship. So that was neat, yeah. That was really cool. So, but, you know, it was a year-long thing, and he wasn't. Sure. And if you ask me about advice, I'm going to give some advice later that will remind me of that. But, so ISA, you know, fantastic. They did some, I'm not sure about your is it Thursdays?
Thursdays.
I remember going to a couple in Chicago. They had expanded, so that's great. So I have entered contests. I've entered gigs. I've had gigs, you know, that sent out scripts, you know, so that's exciting. So that's neat. I mean, that, you know, again, I haven't, I'm where I am. I'm merging the Arctic woolly bear caterpillar, but everything, I feel like everything you do, I hope, you know, somewhere down the line can help you in something. And so I just keep going. And so I just keep going, you know.
I mean, that's one of the big advice that you hear the most is just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Keep honing your craft.
Yeah.
Keep going, and eventually, if you don't give up, something's gonna.
Right.
You're gonna emerge.
You're gonna emerge. You're gonna have antifreeze in your blood.
So let's go to that advice. What is your what advice?
For sure. So let me just for context of the script. This got me in this to the ISA fast track. Is called Uncaged. It was years ago, pretty old now, and it got me into the quarterfinals of the Nichols. So I'm like, cool. And it got me some, you know. So if you get to the quarterfinals, you will get executives to reach out to you.
Right, because that's a top tier.
Well, it's one, contest, and then you know not up to semifinal, but
sure, but it's still a top tier contest
for sure.
And there's a lot of entries.
Yeah,
so
a lot of
entries.
entries.
Get a quarterfinalist is
so I,
good.
you know, again a little bit of, you know, oh my God, you know, but here's Uncaged, right? Period, piece, involves a zoo, involves animals, involves a serial killer at a zoo. My one place where I locked animals and serial killers together. And so I guess, you know, people liked it as a read, okay? But I do remember, because I've gone back and looked at some of the queries, I've saved everything. And we know one of the executives wrote back, he says, tough sell. And I'm like, I think a lot of my stuff is a tough sell. And
Right.
because I choose period pieces. I choose serial killers who are not nice, likable characters. You know, I choose this Jumbo the elephant. Here you go, have fun, make that movie. You know, I mean, one person told me make it animated. I'm like, maybe. You know, so I guess getting back to the advice, I'm just wondering if, as an a younger writer, I'm wondering if the choices are really important that you make. I mean, I wonder if you want to, when you're starting out, again, just, take what it is. I write what I like, but I just wonder if there are, choosing that right script, and it may be something that's a lower budget. It might be. It might be something. I see a lot even in the ISA gigs that might be, smaller sets, smaller character list. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the gigs I remember, this was again years ago, and Tim helped me with the script. It was basically set in a house. And that got, the executive wanted a 1 or 2 set type of thing.
Right.
And so they did ask for it. So I don't know.
Is that something that maybe you're thinking about for yourself, or are you just going to stay on your path?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I think I'm going to stay on my path because I like my path and I'm enjoying it. But and please, again, for you out there, don't do this at home. You you got to do your heart. I'm not trying to say, I would never say look at the marker. But I'm just saying the right script. And I just wonder when you're starting if you might choose carefully. I guess that's all I'm saying.
I mean, I think that's good advice.
You do.
I think that, one, you have to stay true to you and what you want to do.
For sure.
But yeah, maybe you do need to think about, we talk about it all the time in events and webinars and things about writing to a budget, thinking about, how many characters you have, if you have big special effects, if you have animals, if you're doing stuff underwater or on the water. I mean, those things, if you're doing car chases, explosions,
for sure,
those add up.
Right.
And so sometimes if you can think a little bit smaller and more contained, you have a better shot of getting to producers who have a little bit of money and aren't looking for $30 million projects.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it is something to.
So you don't think that's bad advice or anything?
No, I think it's great advice. Okay. Especially when you're coming up, you want the odds in your favor. Right?
Exactly.
And so if you can stack it in your favor a little bit in that way, then you do have a better chance of a broader range of producers or people who might look at your stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then you can always, as you're growing too and getting things produced, then you can do more.
Yeah.
You can emerge more.
You can emerge more. Yeah.
Beautiful moth.
I'm glad you like that metaphor.
I do. I love it. I can visualize it.
I worked it, man. I
love that. It's very visual.
Yeah.
I can picture it. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, get it.
Yeah,
I also love those frogs that freeze in the winter and then come back to life.
Yeah, come back up. It's amazing.
What's your favorite word?
Okay, I'm going to have to go with facetious.
Love it.
And only because, if I'm right, I think I am, I believe it is the only word that has all of the vowels alphabetically arranged.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's F-A-E, now I'm going to misspell it, F-A-E, C-I-T-I-O-U-S, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, facetious.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Every time I don't think I've ever put facetious in a script.
I don't think I have
now
either.
I might want to.
Yeah.
I like it.
I remember that from years ago. I don't know why I remember that, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in one more fun one.
Sure. To light it a little levity.
If you had one day to go back to any historical moment or era to just enjoy yourself for 24 hours and then come back.
And you can answer it to me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Where would you go? What'd you see?
Yeah. Gosh, that's good. I'm probably gonna have to say the Victorian era, and only because I've written a lot. Again, this actually 2 scripts. The most recent one about the elephant was Victorian, and the other one, Uncaged, I talked about is Victorian. So I had to do a lot of research about that time. Now, not necessarily the best time for women, of course, and but I just like the aura of that,
there's a certain
elegance, again, if you're in a good social base that's,
Right.
so,
Not down in,
Yeah.
the Jack the Ripper
right.
zone on the streets,
East
but
End,
maybe
little, yeah. So that's what I would say.
What is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to grammar or spelling mistakes?
Well, I'm going to talk about stylistic, because I did think about this too, and that is, I believe in one space after the period. Now I'm old, and I learned on a typewriter, and I learned 2 spaces after the period, and I appreciate that. But there are a lot of technological advances since the 80s, and now, especially for things for response, it's on a phone and on on websites and everything. It is, to me, it's one space.
I'm converted from 2 to 1.
Are you?
Yes. So I had to go back to my old scripts and go through
Bless
them
your heart, really?
and fix them all. Yeah, because it is true. Like, currently, it's one space. It just is.
I'm so glad. Because
opinions, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think I've read somewhere that in scripts it can be 2.
It can be.
It can be 2? Okay.
It was for when I started. It was 2.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I've had to go back and then.
Yeah.
Everything evolves. You kind of have to just
everything evolves.
stay with it. Like bold slug. Are you a bold slug liner?
Yeah.
I am too.
Oh no, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
you're
not.
not?
No,
I'm
no.
a bold slug
Are you
liner.
bold slug? Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it now.
It's a visual.
It's always
cue.
like you're a little resistant, and then I'm like, I like it actually.
Yeah.
It pops.
Yeah, it pops. It does.
I like a little pop.
Yeah.
And then last question: If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
Okay. First of all, I wrote a short comedy feature about a genie who was a terrible genie, and so I'm only going to go in one wish.
You know the rules.
I know the rules, man, and I know how I'm prepared. I know how they can be like. Yeah, that was
Trick
fun.
you, yeah.
But I will say this one, and not to end in a little downer. Let's hope it's a wish. But when I left Albuquerque many years ago and went to Chicago without a job, without a place to live, I had a horse, and my wish would be to make sure that her name was Page One. She's a little white Arabian. She was beautiful. My wish is that she's okay.
And you don't know anything about what's happening? No.
My wish is that she's okay.
Well, I wish that too.
Thank you.
I hope Page One. I love that name.
Yeah, Page One.
That's
Well, I was
cute.
in the newspapers.
I know,
Yeah,
that's cute.
yeah.
I got it. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my God, this is a joy.
It was such a pleasure to
so
chat
much
with
fun.
you.
Yeah, I
And,
appreciate it.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks.